your body enters into one of the three categories: freeze, flight, or fight. By shock, I mean trauma. It could be a car accident, an unexpected news, right? Somebody died, or you are being raped. These are all traumas. And then your body enters into fight, flight, or freeze. And that is related to the nervous system. The nervous system is designed in order to protect the brain and to protect your life. We are creating patterns, pathways, neurological pathways, and chemical addiction. Our own chemical addiction. This is why we become addicted to certain emotions, because we feel comfortable, we've been already there, and we've trained our brain in that path. The real victim there, to be honest, is my son, right? The kids are the victims of divorce. And so they are actually the victims because they cannot choose, they cannot escape. And that is until they are, 15 years, 14 years. But I think everybody has their heart and they can connect and acknowledge their needs and search for help to transform, and not anymore identifying with the victim. That is a no personality. That doesn't belong anymore to your future.
How I'm gonna sit with my thoughts, because you go crazy. Like, you're getting so many thoughts. You either seek for your phone, you either seek to go and look something, try to get out of that zone, and try to find an escape way. But for me, and I think for the most people, I think silence is the hard part.
You're super young, so you grew up in a highly stimulated society, right? Where silence is non-existent. If it's not the TV, it's the music. If it's not the cell phone, it's the work. If it's not a book. So there's never silence, contemplative silence, to step in the power. So we're not victims, we are victors. Connect with the power of not being the victim, being the victor of your life, and connect with silence. Silence has all the answers. Those are the two things that I try to implement in my life, and every time I do it, only beautiful things happen.
Last week, Flora Zenit told us how she survived kidnapping in Venezuela, lost her mother at 14, and rebuilt her life across 4 countries. Today, she is back, and we are going deeper. Flora is a certified spinal flow practitioner, Kundalini bodywork therapist, botanist, and founder of the Lotus Activation Method. In this conversation, she explains why your nervous system keeps you stuck, what your body is storing that your mind has already forgotten, and how silence, real silence, changes everything. This is part 2 with Flora Zenit. Let's talk about your certifications now. So if you have certification in spinal flow, breathwork, Kundalini, bodywork, yoga, Thai massage, and breathwork. What is the thread that connecting all of them?
Yeah, so the thread is craniosacral fluid.
Tell me about it.
All of those modalities are a different version of interacting, activating the craniosacral fluid, which is a liquid that covers the central nervous system, the spinal cord, including the brain. So it's around our brain, and it's a substance that gives buoyancy to the brain. So that is floating and protected. But that liquid also brings all the messages through chemical and hormones messages through the spinal cord in the central nervous system, and then it directs it. The messages are directed through the peripheral nervous system and then reaches the organ. So the common theme, the common thread is that fluid and the nervous system. Kundalini activation in the lineages of India are all these kriyas, these asanas, these breathing techniques that activate that Kundalini energy, the two serpents, Pingala, and the Sushumna, which is the central channel. That is the Indian way to address a human phenomena. Now, the Western way is spinal flow, spinal energetics, but the goal is the same. Activating that. Once you activate that, you activate your prana, your living force. You connect with that and you heal at all levels. Yeah, what do you think? Did I answer?
But if we activate that fluid, what's the benefit I'm getting as a human being?
Okay. There are benefits at a physical level, emotional level, mental level, and beyond, right? Transcendental level. So at a physical level, when you do these exercises, this kriya's, this breathing, or you are facilitated by a spinal flow or spinal energetic facilitator through some touches, gentle touches on the spine, you accelerate that fluid. It accelerates the fluid. And this dissolves the three main blockages that are in our spine and nervous system, which are chemical blockages, physical blockages, and emotional blockages. So let's start with the physical posture, right? Wrong posture. Therefore, the flow of energy is interrupted and that affects the whole system, right? Then the second is the chemical blockages from what we eat, what we breathe in the environment, the medicines that we take or the drugs that we take. All of that is stored there and it blockages the fluid and the energy. And then last is the emotional blockages. The emotional blockages, there is an amazing book written by Candace Pert. She's a neurobiologist. And in the 90s, she wrote this book that is called The Molecules of Emotion, where she publishes her discoveries of how our body has the receptors for all the chemicals. So let's say the DMT or the THC of the weed, of the marijuana, has an effect on us only because we have a receptor for that stimulant. So we have the receptors in our body, and the emotions are the ones that generates those chemicals. So if we control the emotions, we control our inner chemistry. If you have a lot of rage, you're going to produce a lot of adrenaline or cortisol. If you are having sexual thoughts, you're going to activate your genitals through a message. So the emotion starts with a thought. You have a thought, you feed that thought, it becomes an emotion and a feeling. The feeling is more at a physical level, and the emotion is this abstract thought, right? And that generates the chemical, the inner chemistry. So I'm saying this because the chemical blockages are produced when we go through trauma, when we go through shocks, when we go through chronic depression. Yes, right? So all of it generates a trauma and is stored so there are ways to flush it out. So that's the first benefit of these techniques. Flush it out at a physical level. Then when you go deeper, you bring prana with the breathing techniques and the Kundalini Kriyas. You bring prana, you bring oxygen. Therefore, your body's working better. Your thoughts are more clear. You have more connection to your center, to your potential. So you're healing at an emotional level and at a mental level simultaneously. Thoughts and emotions, they are working together all the time. One activates the other, or they activate each other.
Okay, so you openly talk about emotional stress. That emotional stress doesn't stay emotional only, but it gets into your body. It becomes physical. What do you mean by that when you talk about emotional stress?
Yeah, there's another book that for whoever or you who is interested into going deeper, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's written by a psychologist, and it
Okay.
goes deep into how the anatomy and the physiology, more like the physiology of the trauma. So when you have a shock, your body enters into one of the three categories: freeze, flight, or fight. By shock, I mean trauma. It could be a car accident, an unexpected news, right? Somebody died, or you are being raped. These are all traumas. And then your body enters into fight, flight, or freeze. And that is related to the nervous system. The nervous system is designed in order to protect the brain and to protect your life. Is designed to react in taking one of those modes. So your vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve that goes from the cranial and goes through the heart, connects the heart, the gut, connects all our survival functions, stops whatever it is non-priority to survive. And that is okay for a little bit of time until the situation resolves. The problem is that in our modern life, we are constantly in that mode. Freeze, flight, and fight. We're stressed. And we're constantly surrounded by challenges more than ever, more than in the past. And so the body keeps producing all these chemicals and it's also not producing other chemicals and neglecting certain functions. So because we're so stressed, our digestive system, which is activated when the parasympathetic system is activated, then we're not digesting properly. We're not resting properly. We're not sleeping properly. And therefore, there's no time for regeneration from healing. The question was how the emotional state connects to the physical state. Yeah. So the emotional state is related to the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is the one that sends all the directions, signals, instructions to the physical system. How? Through the endocrine system. So if we are in a flight or fight, in fight mode, so adrenaline is produced, right? So the pituitary sends the signal to the adrenal glands to produce more adrenaline, and you start like a warrior. I have to fight this challenge. And then your whole physiology changes. Your heart beats faster, right? Your energy doesn't go to digestion. It goes to the feet because you might have to run and you're fighting. So it changes our physiology. And it's okay. The problem is that is our body resilient enough to come back to a neutral state, or do we stay in that state of emergency? So if we don't resolve the trauma, if we don't do frequent somatic release tension work, that trauma accumulates. And we are creating patterns of pathways, neurological pathways, and chemical addiction, our own chemical addiction. This is why we become addicted to certain emotions, because we feel comfortable, we've been already there, and we've trained our brain in that path.
So you ever talk about trauma romanticization, like we are playing the victim card, yeah? Why do you think so? Everyone loves to have that mentality of a victim.
Why do I think that? Because it's easy. No, it's easy to blame others. It's easy to give up. It's easy to basically that. It requires no effort.
But how can we draw that line? So if someone is already going through a trauma or a pain or something, but how we are going to draw that line, whether we are actual victim or we are just playing as a victim?
You can be a victim in the moment, and I think the first step is to acknowledge your suffering. And this comes both with the relationship with yourself and with others, right? So if I am the victim in this moment of domestic violence, the first thing I have to do is acknowledge it. And acknowledge why am I in that situation? Because I am in that situation for the previous choices I made. There's nobody else to blame. I mean, we're not getting here into the child trauma. We can get that after. But as adults, we are there for the decisions that we have made in the past. So the first thing is, okay, I am in this situation, and accept with radical compassion our situation, and also acknowledge that only us, only I can change that. How? With little steps, one step at a time. And so you need courage. So the first thing is I can do it, and also acknowledging that if I cannot do it, I need support. So I need to reach for support. So I have to be courageous enough, vulnerable enough, humble enough to reach for help. Let's say, in my case, I was a single mother. Let's say that's a victim, right? I am sad. Nobody wants to date me. I am having a really hard time raising my son by myself, but I don't want to acknowledge that it's difficult and that I would love to have a partner because that makes me look weak, because I am strong and I don't need a man. So the first step was really seeing the situation, being honest with myself, knowing that I was a single mother because I chose the wrong partner. I chose the wrong partner. I didn't see the red flags. I didn't learn about polarity, right? And then the second step was being honest with myself. What do I want? Where do I want to be? And if I cannot reach that, I need help. So I search for mentors, right? I searched for women and men that were married, and they were giving advice on how to choose a man, on what are the qualities that a woman has to cultivate. I'm giving this example. So the next step is searching for help. When I was married, I was going through the divorce, and my ex, he was abusive, verbally, not physically. And so I searched for help. I searched friends, and then I searched an institution for help to support me in the process. And then I got divorced. So it was a hard transition. The real victim there, to be honest, is my son, right? The kids are the victims of divorce. And so they are actually the victims because they cannot choose, they cannot escape. And that is until they are, what, 15 years, 14 years. But I think everybody has their heart and they can connect and acknowledge their needs and search for help to transform and not anymore identifying with the victim. That is a no personality. That doesn't belong anymore to your future.
Let's talk about music. I think you are so passionate about music. I've seen one of your videos where you are sitting in a forest area where you are playing an instrument. I don't know the name of the instrument, but I was listening to it and I loved it. The way you
Yeah.
played. Tell me everything about your passion about music, how you started, what you're doing right now.
Nice. So I studied music since very young. I went to music academy. My mother was a high achiever, so she put me into sports, music, and all of that. I took piano lessons, classical music lessons, composition lessons, singing lessons, and also jazz. So I was in a little group of jazz, and I was playing the piano. But then when she died, I lost the connection with music. I don't know why. Maybe she was the one pushing it, and so I stopped the music for like 10 years. And then I started again the music, but from the religious perspective. So mantras, so more from a healing perspective, more hypnotic, less about virtuosity, more about trance and healing and relaxation and just flavors, but also as human connection and with a purpose. So I did music for yoga studios for many years with different instruments, whatever I could find, I would try to learn it and share with my friends. Guitar, ukulele, the hand drum, the traditional folk Indian drum, which is called mridanga, and voice, and always playing original music. The hand drum, the one that you're describing, is such an interesting instrument. I don't have it anymore, but so this instrument is a Swiss creation, but it is all metal and it sounds like a spaceship, right? And it
Yeah.
looks like an ovni. It's weird that you haven't heard it because there's a lot of Australians players.
I'm
Uh,
not into music, so that's why.
I will
Yeah.
share you a link of a group that is called AIR. I think they're French and they play the hand drum with the didgeridoo and the mouth harp. And they make techno music, but with these three instruments. And it's completely acoustic. So this instrument, originally you have in the Caribbean coast near Trinidad, Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is an island right in front of Venezuela in the Caribbean. And then they started to play with the fingers in pentatonic scales. Pentatonic, and then came Phrygian scales, and they created this whole range of scales, minor scales, major scales, all kinds of scales. And now it's used very much in medicinal music, trance music, and it's resonant. When you hear it, it transports you. And anybody can play it because it's just one scale. So it's a drum. It's about the rhythm that you create, but the melody is always going to be fine because it's one scale. So you can really tune into a trance just by playing it. No, the hand drum is definitively for you to relax. The player can relax, the listener can relax. It's not mental. It's really meditative.
Talking about the meditation. So, when I was doing research, I think I read somewhere that you have practiced meditation for so long years, maybe 10 years something. And I think one of the times you did this stay silent for 10 days. What's that experience? I really want to know. How's it?
Uh, The retreat is called Vipassana and they have centers all over the world. And what they do is they give you the opportunity to experience being a monk for 10 days. Even if you're a householder, high achiever worker, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your religion neither because it's only silence. And so you experience your mind. It's 10 days. It can be longer. Once you become very consistent and you're kind of become part of the community, you can do 20, 30, 40 days. And it's only silence. Now, the silence is the easiest part. The hard part is being seated 9 hours in the same position, dealing with the pain, transforming the pain, and focusing on the breathing and bringing the mind from the future and from the past. So silence is key, but it's
If you ask me, and I think if you ask anyone, most of the people find it really hard, like really difficult to sit with silence. Even if you ask me if I have to sit for 10 minutes now in silence, just with my thoughts, it's horrible actually. How I'm gonna sit with my
torture.
thoughts because you go crazy. Like you're getting so many thoughts. You either seek for your phone, you either seek to go and look something, try to get out of that zone and try to find an escape way. But for me, and I think for the most people, I think silence is the hard part.
Yeah, you're super young, so you grew up in a highly
Stimulated environment.
stimulated society, right? Where silence is non-existent. If it's not the TV, it's the music. If it's not the cell phone, it's the work. If it's not a book, so there's never silence, contemplative silence. In the course that I teach, so I have a course that is called Lotus Activation, and we start with that, with Vipassana. Once you practice that for a little bit, then I welcome other types of meditation, mantra, visualization, adding other things, right? Because the mind is trained, it's like sharpened. So when you train, so the mind, there's a beautiful analogy from the Tibetan Buddhism, even though Vipassana is not Tibetan. They're very different. But anyways, the analogy is that the mind is like an elephant and the distraction is like a monkey. And the meditator is trying to control the elephant, but the elephant is crazy because the monkey is controlling the elephant and the monkey is crazy. And it requires a lot of effort. But the more you do it, the monkey calms down and the elephant also starts listening and starts being domesticated by the meditator. And then it becomes easier and easier the more you do it. But it's super hard in the beginning because the mind is like the wind. It is very hard to control, but it is everything. Whoever controls their mind really controls their life, their destiny, their results. So high achievers, high athletes, it's all about their mindset, right? The mind is always telling you, no, do it later, or no, I have to worry about the future, or complain about the past. And so the point zero is the present. The more we train the mind, in the beginning, as I'm telling you, it's horrible. It's like sour, it's bitter, but then it becomes sweet. Then you crave it because once you taste that, you crave that state. And once you reach those peaceful states, you can beyond and you can reach bliss, which is the next level. Because peace is fine, but what about bliss? Bliss is an inner ecstatic state that is satisfying, it's happiness, it's pleasure, but not material pleasure, not temporary pleasure. It's a pleasure that comes from the self. And you can only tap into that when there is coherence. I'm not there all the time. I have a life with challenges and my mind sometimes is restless, but whenever I come back, I see how I change my inner reality. Once I change my inner landscape, my external landscape changes and it sets my steps in those external landscapes. So, yes, silence is the source of all sounds. And if we're all the sounds go back, and we are afraid of that because we don't learn to relax. We are trained to be productive and we're not learning to appreciation. In silence, you tap into appreciation, observation, contemplation, control, discipline. All of that is training you for success.
Now let's talk about your work. Let's talk about lotus activation. What's this obsession about lotus? I know about this flower, like say why it's so important for you. I know the significance also that it's grown in mud. Like say mud is really important to grow lotus. But why it's so important for you? Because your work starts from lotus, yeah, that whole flower, and you grown. I think if I'm not wrong, I think in my research I came to know that you have a farm where you have grown all these lotus flowers. But I really want to know that why you become so obsessed with it.
Yeah, well, I study agronomy, botany. So
Yeah.
I have a technical degree in botany. And in the plant world, the families are classified according to the flower. It doesn't matter if it's a tree, a bush, a little plant. What matters in order to classify the different families of plants is the flower. So the flower defines everything. And so I became obsessed with the flowers since very little. I loved flowers and I studied flowers. Then I moved to Costa Rica and I went to India, right? And I saw the lotus flower and all the symbolism around transcendence, that you can grow in this stinky, muddy, horrible mud and it is transmuted into blossom, aromatic, symmetry, and beauty, and all the properties that it has. So I always loved the lotus flower. And then in Costa Rica, I got this land that had a swamp. So the people, my friends, would tell me, why don't you fill the swamp with some soil so that you can plant stuff and you can do something with the swamp, because the swamp is, stinky and nothing really interesting grows there. And I'm like, no, that's not how permaculture works. Permaculture, which is permanent agriculture, is a ramification of agriculture and like organic agriculture, let's say. So the first thing that you do is to observe, just like in meditation. Vipassana, you observe what it is. Vipassana means to see things as they are, not wanting to transform anything, just to accept. So in permaculture, it's the same. It's like this philosophy applied to nature and the transformation of the ecosystem. First, I see what there is, and then I intervene in the most useful and working with nature, not against nature. So I searched all around, found some lotus seeds, and I planted a couple, and then it became full with lotus flowers. And my neighbors were like, "Oh my gosh, it's the attraction of the community." So it went from being a boring, stinky swamp to the attraction and the inspiration. And working with the flower, I discovered all the properties. So the stem has antibacterial properties, the leaf cleanses the kidneys, the flower has properties for calming and restoring the nervous system. The seeds are eatable, so it also purifies the water. So a challenge became a blessing only by observation, when you are in the right mindset of observing, not fighting reality, but responding to reality. Anyways, when I was doing lotus tea ceremonies, so I started to make tea with the flower and the leaf. So this whole idea started with, connecting with this beautiful flower. People would come to my garden to see the flower. And then at that time, I was also already working with the Kundalini energy. And the Kundalini energy is symbolized also in certain schools with a lotus flower. So the root is your root chakra, and then the spine is the stem of the lotus, which is long and tall, sometimes 7 feet tall. So that's two and something meters, very tall. And then the crown chakra, when it's open, when you feel all this energy in the fontanella area, that's the sahasrara, the 1,000 lotus flower. So I was doing this energetic work while working with the lotus flower, and the name just came to me. Lotus activation is really activating my inner lotus flower, and it goes along with the ancient Tibetan mantra that is Om Mani Padme Hum. Mani, the jewel, Padme, the lotus, whom I am. So the jewel that resides in me, in my lotus. So we are the lotus and we have a jewel, but it's covered in muddiness, in ignorance. Once you activate it, then you're full bloom. And so the course is more focused on women, even though I sometimes work with men, but it's really learning all the techniques to activate that channel, to activate the inner wisdom, to explore the nervous system, endocrine system, the psyche. How does the mind work? How can I have a relationship with my mind for it to be an engine for my goals and not an obstacle? And of course, purification.
So, what you're saying is that diversity is really important in order to grow in your life.
Yeah, but it's challenge. That's a good thing. Adversity isn't interchangeable with challenge. Is the reality challenging you? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
What haven't you built yet? That you want to build something and you still
Oh,
in a planning stage. Yeah.
the book that I'm writing, I think it will take me like 3 months to finish my book, and it's called The Spectrum of Pleasure. And so, is this from trauma to transcendence? So, how to build a connection with the body to go from suffering trauma or even not feeling an orgasmia and not feeling like when you say, I sit down in meditation and I cannot stay in the present, that is not feeling the body. It's like an spiritual anorgasmia. So when you feel the body, you have a spiritual orgasm. So I am creating this map. I already created the map. So I'm presenting this map and I'm really excited. That's like
Okay.
I'm working every day on it. So yeah.
So the last question, the one thing you want every listener to do differently today, just one thing, maybe a simple thing that you want to suggest.
Mm. Well, the common thread through everything that we spoke, I would think, is to step in the power. So we're not victims, we are victors. And that, so yeah, connect with the power of not being the victim, being the victor of your life, and connect with silence. Silence has all the answers. Those are the two things that I try to implement in my life, and every time I do it, only beautiful things happen.
Yeah, that's such an incredible way of wrapping up this conversation. Thank you so much, Flora. It's such a pleasure for me to have you on my podcast. And I'm just fascinated by everything you said in this conversation. And I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this is going to get so much value from this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You are a great interviewer. You're
Thank you.
so important to be curious.
To learn more about Flora Zenit and the Lotus Activation Method, visit lotusactivation.co. Link in the description below. If this conversation shifted something for you, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you want more conversation like this on breaking the script, subscribe. There is a lot more coming.